How do we respond when we hear a definite calling of God on our lives? I definitely think the measure of our faith is a contributing factor to our response. Good morning. This is Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Monday. We've been considering what faith looks like and what it causes a person to do, as recorded in the Hall of Fame of Faith in Hebrews chapter 11. In verse 8, Abraham is mentioned as an example of responding to God by faith. It says, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. You know, obedience is absolutely necessary to show our faith to the Lord. Sometimes the calling of God seems to be a strange request, something that we really can't answer because it's almost too bizarre. We think probably we've misunderstood what God really wants here. Abraham was very comfortable living among his family when God called him out to leave everything behind and go to a land that he didn't know. Perhaps one of the most difficult things to do in obedience to God's calling is to leave our comfort zone. This is the place where we live or where we know people, perhaps where they speak our language or where we are active in the community. But when God called for Abraham to leave everything behind and follow, he was planning for generations of people to come after him as a chosen people. These would be the example before the world of what it is like to follow God and to receive his blessings and his protection in this world. By the way, he's actually calling us to that same task today, to leave all and to follow the Lord and show the world what our God is like in his direction on our lives or his blessings on our lives or his protection over us. When Abraham was called out to God, the Bible simply says he obeyed. Now, I'm sure there were a lot of things that went into that obedience, but there were some questions that he had, perhaps even some doubts. But this kind of faith, shown in Hebrews chapter 11, says, I will go no matter what, Lord. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. This was huge because God would actually carry him across much of the known world in that day before he came to Palestine. But the great reward was that he would receive this promised land as an inheritance from God for his faithfulness and his obedience. You know, the most interesting part of this man of faith and his obedience is the idea that he never knew this land as his own while he was alive. He traveled as a sojourner across Palestine and got into several different scrapes with others, but all this time God was telling him, every place you put your foot, this land is going to be yours. It wasn't until probably 4 generations or more later that the children of Israel came back to this promised land and received it as their inheritance. And it was all because years before this, Abraham trusted in God and he acted in faith, obediently going to where God had called him. Can we do that today?